Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven, and I'm here with my very special guest, Niara Terela Isley. Did I say that right?
Terela.
Terela.
It's okay.
Getting closer. So incredible conversation we've been having, and I really appreciate you being on. Once again, if people want to get in touch with you for a session or for your own personal information, how would they do that?
Well, you can check out one of my websites. One is encounterswithhealing.com, and that is for healing work, body-centered work and things like that. And then I also have another website called facingtheshadow.embracingthelight.com.
Excellent. Great. Good. And when you do private sessions, do you do those in person or do you do them on Skype?
I can do them on Skype.
Okay. Excellent.
So,
That's great. So is that part of the regression too, or no? Is that just, does the person go into a space of hypnosis when you're working on them?
Well, I have a couple processes I can use on Skype. I'm kind of tentatively trying some hypnosis sessions via Skype, but it's kind of a touchy business because it's better to be in person if there's a hypnosis session. But because so many people are at a distance and so many people want sessions, I'm trying limited sessions on Skype, but just to see how it goes. But my requirement for a hypnosis session on Skype is that you have someone that you absolutely trust who can also handle technology to be there with you for the session. Because if the Skype call gets dropped, then that person has to be the one to get the Skype call back and handle the technology so that the session is not interrupted.
Yeah, makes sense. And obviously you work with people outside the U.S. as well, right?
Well, I can, yeah. I haven't done too much of it yet, but it's possible that I can via
Excellent.
Skype.
Okay. Well, it seems to me like, there's a need for what you're doing without a doubt. And so I applaud you for the work you're doing. And I'm sure it will pick up more and more momentum as more people realize where they've been and where they've been walking on so many different levels. But what is your insight regarding the future here in this country? I mean, do you see, what do you see down the road? I ask people this a lot because I'm curious to where they're kind of getting their insight.
Well, it's hard to know. I feel like because we hear so much, excuse me, I think we hear so much about what's wrong in the world that, people are a lot more interested in that for some reason than they are of the things that are right with the world. So the things that are right with the world don't get the press. But I think that there's a lot to be hopeful about because people are waking up in droves. It's kind of like the more extreme our government leaders, religious leaders, whatever, get, the more people wake up. And I think that there's a wave of awakening that's happening. And it's just kind of like sensing the nature of time. As an intuitive person, I've been sensing for several years, probably at least a decade now, that the time that we're moving through right now is very fluid and things could go either way. So trying to make predictions right now is really an iffy business. It's kind of like, how do I say this? It's kind of like visualize reality as this big bubble. And then let's say something like consciousness impacts the bubble. And then it kind of shatters and it forms all these other little bubbles from the one big bubble. And in one of the bubbles are people that think the world is going to go this way. It's going to take this turn, whether it's doomsday or bliss. It's people in that particular bubble that all subscribe to a certain future worldview. They will go there. And then another bubble will go someplace else. That's kind of how I'm seeing it.
That's interesting.
It depends on what you think is going to happen, where you will end up.
Right. Yeah, manifestation through consciousness, I would suspect. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ascension programs, but there's one that deals with the Metatron frequency and deals with full light universal spectrum, where people who ascend to the highest level will move on to that universe, and then those who are incomplete will go to what they call an oratronic spiral. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, but that's kind of what kind of reminds me of what you're talking about. But it's something that's not necessarily evil; it's just incomplete, which means depending on where they're at, to what level they've ascended in consciousness, is where they're going to wind up. But that's also, I feel, is more of a transition through the death experience, in my opinion. But yet again, I mean, it feels like we're going through a death cycle here on the world sometimes.
Yeah, it kind of does. So I'm kind of watching my thoughts right now.
Hmm.
I'm observing everything, but I'm trying to spend the majority of my time, my consciousness time, in positive thoughts and feelings and visualizations of how I want life around me to be. It's there was in the Star Trek movie Insurrection, where they found those people that were living this kind of, it was like Eden, sort of. They were living this beautiful life, and then these people were getting ready to steal it from them. There was something that the main character woman could do. She could kind of extend a moment in time so that certain things could take place. And that's kind of how I'm thinking of it now, is can we work with time ourselves in such a way, or in small groups in such a way, that we can extend a moment of time and make something else happen in it? Because really, if we're so close to having a major breakthrough in our consciousness, that we really realize that our thoughts make the world. We hear it, so many of us believe it, but the indoctrinations programs that have been run on us by the elites on this planet for thousands of years, those are going to die very hard. It's going to take really concerted effort to pull our thought energy out of those indoctrination programs and begin to put thought energy into what we really want to create as a beautiful world here, where we can all thrive and be healthy.
I agree. Yeah, they have to be deprogrammed from the linear world they were subjected to, which was based on, censorship, lies, and deception. Point blank. So that's going to take a bit of a journey, but still they can do it. And you're right, it's manifestation at will. We can manifest anything. And Star Trek was pretty spot on about a lot of things, as I'm sure I don't have to tell you.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
A lot of their information, is quite inventive and really right there, spot on. But what's interesting is I'm a firm believer we can change timelines, and we can access other timelines to alter this one. I'm under the suspicion that there have been some militarized personnel that have been screwing with timelines and kind of screwing things up. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, maybe we need to kind of correct that. So, anyways, that's what I'm looking at. But you also do remote viewing, is that right?
No, I haven't really done, official remote viewing, but I have to tell you, sometimes if I lose something like my glasses or my car keys, if I just stop, making myself look for them and just go quiet, it's like I can see where they are, and then I just go pick them up.
There you go. Well, yeah, there you go.
Uh-huh.
That's enhanced for sure.
Yes.
That's a good way to use it,
Hmm.
versus having somebody control and manipulate everything you're observing. So
Yeah.
that's
Uh-huh.
for darn sure.
Hmm.
Well, it's interesting. So when you think about the people that have been taken on and off world, do you feel like this is a continuous thing, or once they're abducted or inducted into my labs, do they constantly get taken, or is there a point in time where they get left alone?
I think some people continue to be taken, and some people get kind of shuffled out of the program and left alone.
Mm-hmm.
But they may have someone that, checks on them every so often to try to make sure that their programming is holding,
Hmm.
you
That's really
know.
interesting.
Mhm.
Wow. So do you feel like you're still being taken and used, or no?
Well, I didn't think so for quite some time, but I had this experience at the Super Soldier Summit this last, couple weeks ago, where I woke up with a very strange round bruise right at the crease near the corner of my eye and my left eye.
Mm-hmm.
And I had Hypnosis in Sedona to look at that. And apparently I was picked up, and they put some kind of instrument there that made the bruise. And what they were trying to do was they were trying to scan my brain for some reason.
Hmm. Yeah, that's kind of an unsettling thing, isn't it?
Very, very unsettling.
Yeah, especially when you think you're kind of clear of all the debris and all of the tracking and whatever it is they're trying to do to keep pulling you in. And all of a sudden something like that transpires. And yeah, it's kind of creepy. You know, there was a time in my life where I was afraid to sleep and I had kind of like a post-traumatic stress because I didn't want to go into an altered space where they would control me. So I would really, well, they kept me awake originally anyway, but after a while I wouldn't want to sleep. I didn't want to rest at all because I didn't want anything infiltrating me. So, yeah, it's nasty.
It's worth mentioning here that I have a lot of trouble sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of trouble getting to sleep.
Yeah. And you're in Colorado.
Yes.
Well, and I'm in Colorado. It's not a problem saying that. But, you know, what's interesting is, what do you think about this state?
What do I think about it?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't thinking too good of things about it for a while, honestly. But we did just have our state legislature just supported parents' right to choose to vaccinate their children or not. So that was really a good step forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of a mixed bag here in Colorado.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, you know, it's interesting because this is a state I was inducted in too. You know, so when I went through all the horrific programming and this and that, this is a love-hate relationship with the state. And what is your impression of the underground here?
The underground.
Just black ops military programs. Do you feel like they're deploying anything, exaggerating any technology here to the masses in Colorado? Just a curiosity.
I think probably more in the urban areas than out in the small towns and small communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of get that myself. So anyways, it's interesting, you know, but it seems to me like across the United States, every place has its own issue. And of course, you know, with satellite-driven technology, there's no place where you can really run and hide. If they decide they want to pull you into a program, they're going to do it. So at least that's what I've noticed. But the title Facing the Shadow, where did you come up with the title for your book?
Well, it kind of comes from my spiritual practice over the years. Way back before the law of attraction had us all sticking our fingers in our ears going la 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 whenever anybody tried to tell us anything that we considered negative. Spiritual practice was about facing your own inner demons and all the shadow material that you hold inside of yourself to become enlightened. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember, you know, meditation, and I read Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, when I was young, and that's how that was my teaching in spirituality was, you know, meditation and spiritual practice and facing all the shadow material that you hold inside so that you can move it out of your way and become enlightened. Mm-hmm. So that's why I picked Facing the Shadow, because I see humanity in a process right now of kind of a collective enlightenment, if even only a first stage of enlightenment. You know, once the consciousness awakens in the human collective, then there really isn't anything that we can't do. Mm-hmm. And so Facing the Shadow and then Embracing the Light, that title came out of those spiritual concepts of we have to face the shadow to move into the light.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Yeah, it's great. And I think that's is probably what helped you along your way, going through the military abduction that you went through, was just being on that path of spirit and the higher levels of consciousness, that you were prepared to some degree. I think your spirit and your soul prepared you for that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too.
Yeah, and it's same with me too, because when they hit me, I was, you know, teaching martial arts, you know, second degree black belt, very spiritual, you know, very much into mysticism and advanced in that area. So I was able to know who I was versus what they were trying to program, it's huge, you know, when you're dealing with any type of technological assault. So I applaud you for that. I do like that. You know, it's interesting when it reminds me of our light casts the shadows, you know, so it's kind of interesting that the shadow isn't necessarily a negative thing, but it's that which is hidden to some degree, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hidden.
There's so many levels to it. You know, a lot of people think of shadows as, you know, evil or something, but can be just hidden, something that's just not seen.
Yeah. Well, there's a story of a Tibetan saint called Milarepa, who was a practitioner of black arts for much of his life, his early life. You know, he was a black magician doing bad things and responsible for a lot of suffering. And then he had some kind of epiphany and decided that he wanted to completely change his life and become enlightened. And he actually turned his whole life around and burned off all the negative karma by facing his own inner demons and became enlightened in one lifetime. So he went from one extreme to the other in one lifetime. And spiritual teachers tell that short story as a lesson in what is possible if we really apply ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that too. And it's interesting because when you think about it, with all these mind control programs, if the switch was turned in the other direction, it would be quite an interesting race of beings on this world.
Oh,
That
yes.
much. Seems to me like they're all trying to, dumb down and control, manipulate, but, flip it in the other direction for a change and watch everybody become an avatar of higher consciousness and without any wars or abuse or anything else. And what a world it would be.
Yeah, it would be. And there was a great thinker actually kind of came from a religious thing. I think he was Jesuit, Teilhard de Chardin. He wrote a book called The Phenomenon of Man. And he postulates, all the evolutionary steps that we went to get to be human beings. And he thinks that the human form is the form of greatest freedom of expression. And he thinks the human form is really pretty good just as it is. And he thinks the next evolutionary leap in consciousness is going to be or the next evolutionary leap for humanity is going to be a leap in consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and I believe that.
Yeah, I do too, without a doubt. Well, that's where we're heading. I mean, if they don't try to keep shutting everybody down in the process. But it's also osmosis too, because even while you and I are having this conversation, we're moving to higher levels of consciousness through our conversation, and that resonance wave goes out and reaches the listeners to many different levels. So we are making a difference, and that energetic, people do get it after a while. They do get the activation, what I call DNA activation to higher consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Without a doubt. So, and do you do martial arts at all or no?
It's something that I've wanted to do, but I haven't yet gotten into it.
Okay. You strike me as a martial artist. That's why I asked.
Yeah, well, I would like to. And I actually, a couple years ago, I sent emails to some of the martial arts places here in Durango asking about classes and cost and things like that. And darned if I never got an email back.
Huh. That's interesting. Well, I'm obviously I'm an instructor, so if you ever want to connect with me, you know where to find me.
All right, that would be wonderful. Okay.
Yes, indeed. But yeah, it's you just strike me as somebody who has that already in there, so to speak. But do you have altars, or do you even know if you have altars?
I don't think that I have altars because I don't think that my experiences started in childhood. I think my ET experiences started in childhood, but I don't think there was MK Ultra stuff in my childhood.
I think that's what helped you again, was not being programmed at such a young age also.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because, they hit me when I was, 2004, I was like 40 years old. So it's interesting when they hit you when you're an adult, it's a lot harder to program you opposed to a little kid who gets broken down. So that's a blessing in disguise right there. Were your parents, did they have contactee experience too or no?
Yeah, I think my dad was an ET experiencer. And I actually talked to a pretty powerful psychic about that, and she had a vision of him being taken and then brought back home, and he was held over his bed between 2 and 3 feet and just dropped. She said she had an image of him just being dropped in the bed. And my dad was the one that kind of turned me on to UFOs. And the thing that he was so fascinated with was Eric von Daniken's books, Chariots of the Gods. About ancient astronauts, and he gave me all 3 of those books to read.
Oh, those are great.
I think he was really fascinated by the idea, and I think that he was probably fascinated by it like so many of us are because we are experiencers.
Mm-hmm. And also, I say this a lot, but we are star beings, and we just it's kind of like having amnesia when you enter onto this world. You forget your celestial heritage, and that's not by that's done on purpose, obviously, with these programs that they're running. Even as a child, we get programmed. So people have to kind of unlearn things and then relearn who they are on a celestial higher level consciousness, which is a different arena. It's a completely different universe. So I think these things, like even the books that you were reading when you were growing up, those are all, I don't want to say triggers, but reminders of our divinity and reminders of who we are on a higher level of consciousness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think I think the biggest threat to these people in these areas is the ascension process of higher consciousness and the fact that we are multidimensional beings. I think they're terrified of that. And even with their black space programs and all the cutesy little exotic craft and all the devices they have, it's nothing compared to the infinite mind and the supercomputer mind. I mean, transhumanism cannot compare to that.
That's true. Anything that can be done with technology can be done with an awakened consciousness.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the whole thing with I never understood the artificial intelligence because all it's doing is mapping the brainwaves of the target and then interfacing all the gifts onto the artificial intelligence. Well, the person had the gifts to begin with. So they're trying to replicate it and then, kind of revamp it onto their level, but it's still going to be inferior. It's not going to have consciousness. So
Right.
that was my big argument with the artificial intelligence. But what is your take on the transhumanism, which I know they're trying to push really hard?
Well, I know they're trying to push it, but basically, I think some of it is going to have some limited success. But again, people are going to kind of assert themselves at some point. I mean, it's like being assimilated by the Borg.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to lose your individuality? Do you want to lose your mind, your ability to control your own life and make your own decisions? Or do you want to be a Borg?
Yep.
Basically, that's really what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing else I want to throw in here, because I've looked into the eyes of quite a few MK Ultra people and super soldiers and things like that, and I really see that a lot of star seeds are pulled into this programs
Mm-hmm.
because we come in and we're already enhanced
Right.
as a star seed. And they think, wow, we'll just, mind control these people and use those enhancements for our own purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what they're doing. And that's really a terrible thing. And then other star seeds, I think, are targeted by the vaccines that causes autism.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it really hard for that star being to fulfill the reason that they came here.
Mm-hmm. I so agree with you on that. Well, that's all part of the reverse engineering in the underground, too, because I know that they're reverse engineering for extraterrestrial races. But also, when they take the DNA template or the brainwave template of a true psychic and telepathic person, then they're going to use that template to create their version of an extraterrestrial. And I'm sure that they've been doing that.
Yeah.
So that's just another thing, too. But yeah, there's nothing that we cannot do once we're fully activated to higher levels of consciousness. And that is a big threat to them without a doubt. But when you see people from day to day, I mean, the whole thing is they're being dumbed down deliberately. So they're already kind of conditioned and ready to be interfaced with what I would call some kind of an artificial intelligence or some form of control.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's the sad part because once you interconnect with these programs, it can be an assassin program. It can take your vitals down immediately and take you out. So it's just like an array system that takes people out.
I know, and it's a dangerous game to play because people of lower consciousness who are kind of dumbed down, if they get wind that they've been manipulated and controlled and had things done to them, they are not going to be enlightened about it. They're going to be out for blood. And there is a lot of them out there.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. And it is kind of
really blow up in the Illuminati's face,
Well, that's what I always say. Don't let the universe has a way of balancing things out. So I suspect that I always say, don't let the universe hit you on the ass on the way out, because I have a feeling that it's really going to happen. I mean, as much as these guys are real arrogant right now, and it's easy to feel that way when you're pumped up on all this adrenaline and all this energy, and you have infinite bank accounts where you can control and manipulate everyone and their mother. But at the same time, there's always a price to pay for that. Nothing's free. And that means even though they have billions of dollars and trillions of dollars, nothing is free. And when it comes down to universal law, that's where the game ends. And I know that. I mean, I don't even have to think about it to know that that's the case. So it's just a matter of time and the illusion of time when that gets changed and done. But, it's interesting when you're talking about the archons, and it seems like they just want to make people suffer. Is that their intent? Because it's not about really destroying everybody quickly or killing people mass extinction wise, is it?
Well, I think that there is. There is kind of this cull the human herd sort of agenda. I think we see it in the chemtrails, we see it in the GMO foods, and we see it in the side effects that pharmaceuticals cause. There's been an explosion of Alzheimer's, and I think that can probably correlates with the chemtrails and all the metal particulates that are getting into our food. They get into the brain. They cross the blood-brain barrier and cause problems in the brain and the pineal gland.
Yeah.
So I really think that there is a program out there where they're trying to kill off a certain segment of the population or certain large segments of the population because they fear us. They fear us awakening as a collective.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to keep a smaller population that they feel they can manage better.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I don't know that that's really coming from the archons, so to speak, but I think the archons in concert with the Illuminati or these ruling bloodlines, the Illuminati are probably kind of thinking ahead and thinking, well, we have a good thing going here. If we can just reduce the Earth's population to a manageable level, then we can kind of keep running this game perpetually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the game is over as far as I'm concerned. Now, another question comes to mind with all the happenings of the Earth and all the way it's being disrupted. Do you think they're terraforming this planet?
I think you make a real good case that they are.
Mm-hmm. It seems that way.
I mean, for what and for who, I'm not really sure.
Mm-hmm. That's what I see. It just seems to me like all that is consciousness based is being destroyed. You know, the trees, the ocean, everything that contains consciousness is being taken out, you know, or at least sabotaged to some extent. So you have to ask yourself, and even when I was thinking about the fracking, I'm thinking that maybe the fracking is actually disrupting the ley lines of the planet. Now it has to be,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so that's another thing too. Now they're disrupting the natural flow of the energy of the earth by this fracking and this greed and everything else. And it's not by accident. You can't tell me these guys are that stupid.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's really irritating. Well, obviously we need to be in charge.
Yes. I think you would do a much better job.
I'm telling you, it's just crazy. I look back at this. I have to try to laugh because otherwise I'd be like pulling my hair out over here. So, yeah, it's just madness. So in reference to the moon, now, do you feel it's under intelligent control?
Yeah, I do.
You do? Okay.
I think it's hollow. I've heard so many stories about how it rings like a bell when there's an explosion, and I really do believe that it's hollow and that it's an artificial satellite.
Mm-hmm. And what would you think, just in speculation or even in knowledge, what do you think its purpose is then? If it's something that's under intelligent control, is it here to monitor? Is it here to influence? What does your radar tell you?
I'm not sure about influence other than the beings that are on the moon, but to monitor for absolute certain. I'm certain that monitoring is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on who's in control of the moon, you know, I wouldn't put it past them to be, you know, trying to influence things from the moon either. Mm-hmm. And the moon does influence us.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It influences our tides, and it has an effect on us too, because like the Earth, our bodies are 75-80% water. Mm-hmm. And so when the moon is moving around, it pulls on the water in our body and causes different emotions, different thoughts, different responses to things.
Right. Yeah, it enhances the emotional body without a doubt. And what kind of species are we talking about on the moon, in your opinion?
Well, I'm not really sure about too many of the species. I think they're like, I remember a really tall, pale being from there, and he didn't seem to be like a regular gray. He seemed to be just a little bit more human looking, like possibly a hybrid. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there are grays there. I think there are probably, this is just a guess, okay? But I would say there's probably several different species that either have bases on the moon or they visit the moon frequently in their craft. Mm-hmm. And then we have human bases on the moon. And in my hypnosis in 2010 with Mary Rodwell, I got the distinct impression that the human bases on the moon operate on the sufferance of the ETs there. Mm-hmm. And the ETs don't like everything that they do, but as long as they don't get too far out of control, they don't interfere with their business.
That's interesting. I love Mary Rodwell too, by the way. She's been on my show. She's a wonderful woman.
She is. She's amazing.
She's top of the line. If you're going to get a regression done, that would be the woman to contact, without a doubt. So, yeah, that's really interesting. You know, when you talk about the different species over there. Now, what I'm thinking also is that if we were to, like, say we teleport to another planet, or we decide to live someplace else. Obviously, our molecular structure is going to change. Our cellular structure is going to change. Everything changes in alignment with the frequency also we're being subjected to, which means our appearance would change. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, there's the science of epigenetics. So if we have as was said by Alex Collier, and then also Barbara Marciniak and Bringers of the Dawn, if we have the genetic material of 22 different extraterrestrial species making up us as humans, then through epigenetics, we could start to manifest all kinds of different characteristics. And I think it's really a function of memory and connection, remembering who we are, and then maybe meeting our star family, and something just kind of clicks inside us, and that epigenetic function of manifesting something in your physiology could happen.
I believe that. It's almost like also, I'm sure you've had initiations, I don't know if you have or haven't, but I have on the inner planes and also through ceremony, and that alters the DNA and connects you into, on an interdimensional level also, with your soul extensions. And of course, those are connected into other star systems and universes, so without getting too esoteric in this conversation. But that's also part of it, and also it alters the DNA and enhances the DNA to some degree. So yeah, it's all about frequency, and we are multidimensional beings, and once we start realizing that, boy, it's incredible.
It is. And I know that a lot of the solar flares and the sun activity that we've had, I think that that's the sun consciously trying to help us evolve to a higher level of consciousness. Because those solar flares, whatever other electronic issues they may cause, I think that they're really giving us DNA upgrades.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I think the chemtrails and trying to keep a cloud cover has been to decrease the amount of light reaching the Earth to try to prevent it again, to try to prevent humanity from awakening.
I totally agree with you. Well, I'm sure you're familiar with light body and light body activation, which of course is done through the sun. I mean, actually, the solar logos, the sun energy, it activates at the cellular level. It activates the light body into Merkaba. And I know this because of the initiations I've had and also the meditations I've done around that. And I can tell you point blank, I mean, there were times when I would meditate through that energy of the sun, and I'm telling you, it amps you up big time. So, yeah, they don't want that. They want it shut down. And of course, the smoke screen is, of course, the chemtrails. And it's devious. I'm telling you, their agenda is very, very devious. But if they have to try this hard to stop something that's meant to be, I mean, insofar as we're meant to ascend to higher levels, we're meant to return to our ancestry, which is, of course, star beings. So it's kind of like, you know what, I think they've already lost before they started the war. However, they're really making things miserable here in the meantime, in the illusion of time.
They are, but I really think they are losing the war because with everything, I mean, there's so many whistleblowers out there now raising awareness about all kinds of stuff in our society. I mean, it's just a huge list of things that whistleblowers are calling attention to. And then the more extreme the government gets, then more people wake up. With every extreme behavior that they do, more people wake up.
Right. Absolutely.
And they can't win. I mean, it's kind of like they're in this trap. It's like kind of like, oh my God, they're waking up. Let's try this. And then this extreme behavior that they think is going to scare everybody back into compliance. Oh no, it didn't work. Some people are whistleblowing about that, and more people are waking up. Well, we're going to have to get more extreme. So for every extreme thing they do, more people wake up. They can't win.
I agree. And also their weapons. I mean, you see them all getting how many guns? I mean, I can't even count how much ammunition they're acquiring and weapons. And I'm thinking to myself, weapons don't work on a multiversal level. I mean, they might think their weapons will work here, but I'll tell you what, they should really be investing elsewhere with technology and not just all these bullets and this and that, because after a while that stuff's not going to work anyway. And there are ways to get around all that stuff. So yeah, I think that they're panicking a little bit. And the worst case scenario is, and I don't want to sound grim, but it's just taking people down. I mean, literally just killing them. And even then we keep ascending in consciousness and they're screwed. So I think it's, I don't think they realize that because I don't think they're competent enough. I really don't think they're connected to spirit at all.
Yeah, well, they better be careful who they kill because remember Obi-Wan Kenobi saying, you can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
I love that, and that's so true. And let me tell you, I'll be the meanest robot in town when I transfer out of this planet. Oh, man, they better watch it. I kid you not. I have a free reign when I get out of here. But I say that in a good way, but it's kind of like, they should be careful who they screw with. I really believe that, yeah. without a doubt, because they're dealing with multidimensional star beings in a matrix. I mean, this is a body, this is a suit we occupy, but we are divine beings within. I mean, they don't even comprehend what's inside, or maybe they do, and they're just plain jealous. What is your take on that?
I think they do comprehend what's in there, and I think they're jealous.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that by controlling us, that they somehow are getting over on us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me tell
like
you.
A little story that I read at my presentation about the spiritual beings from the 11th dimension falling under the spell of these other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was very good, by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
I won't give away all your excellent presentation information. I hope that Lorian's going to have that for, I think she's going to have a pay-per-view download, if I'm not mistaken, for the expert presenters. And hopefully that'll get, I know people have asked me about that, so that'll be really good because people get to experience that. That was incredible. And there's so much information in there. And switching gears just a little bit here, are you working on any new projects? What are you doing right now?
Right now, I'm just trying to take care of me. I've been kind of a little bit in denial myself of just how much writing the book impacted me.
Mm-hmm.
It was really tough emotionally to write that book, really tough.
Yeah.
And it was really hard on my body because I have some stuff going on with my back that I'm pretty sure was caused by the sexual assault that I went through. Mm-hmm. And so I have back pain. I don't look disabled, but it's really, really, really hard to sit in a chair. Mm-hmm. And I sat in a chair and forced myself to sit through a lot of pain to get that book done. And now I'm having to kind of pay the piper, and I can't sit in a chair for too long. I have to move around all the time. And I just, I've got to take care of my body. So this summer it's about taking care of me, and I'm going to try to move over to Pagosa Springs. And, well, I'm not going to try. I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And so I'll move to Pagosa Springs and get myself in a whole new living situation, which I've been dying to get into a new living situation for a very long time. Mm-hmm. So once I get that settled, sometime in the fall, I should start with some new projects. Excellent. And I'm hoping this summer to start my project of making YouTube videos once every 2 weeks, or once a week would be great, but I'm not sure I can do one a week. But I'm going to try to do some YouTube videos to expand on some concepts in my book through the summer and upload those to my YouTube channel.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. And when you mentioned your back issues, I'm wondering if is that Kundalini related?
It's possible it could be, and it could be implant related too, because I remember I was having a dream when I lived back in Las Vegas, and I was in my 40s and, trying to sort all this stuff out. I had a dream. I woke up from a dream, and I was laying on my stomach, which I never sleep on my stomach. And and when I had the dream, it was like somebody had pulled a flap of skin up over my sacrum, and they were inserting something in there and then folding the skin back over and healing it, doing rapid healing on it. Mm-hmm. So I think that I may have an implant down there, and it may be causing some of my problems.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised. For some reason, the Kundalini came to mind because that is that's the lower sexual energy that comes and transcends up. And if you were assaulted in some way, that might affect it to some degree.
Yeah.
So, yeah, something to work on. Of course, I don't have to tell you how to meditate. I'm sure you're familiar with all the chakras and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that's just unifying. The best way, in my opinion, is to unify those chakras. And I used to do that a lot. Of course, they hated that when I first got inducted. They used to try to get me to stop meditating. That was the first thing they didn't want me doing. Anything spiritual they didn't want me involved in, because that was raising my vibratory rate and altering the program.
Yeah, not only that, meditation changes your brain waves. Mm-hmm. They can't have that. It's like when Dr. John Hall, I think, who was the last speaker,
right.
He talked about using binaural music or audios to disrupt the brain signals that they try to target you with.
Right.
And that seemed like a really good idea.
Yeah, yep, he's right. I haven't tried that, but mine was a real smart bomb, because mine could actually recalibrate to anything I subjected it to. It would actually start piggybacking off of the wave and then start integrating it into the artificial intelligence. It was really very interesting. Let's put it that way. So, wow. But still I can override. I still have anomaly signals and things like that, but I'm the one running the show, not them. Thank goodness. But I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
No.
I don't like the fact that they can deploy something like that to control, manipulate somebody, program them, erase memories or insert memories. And the sad thing is, when you talked about Alzheimer's, what comes to mind is I know the technological deployment of some of this technology can actually erase memories and actually stop people in mid conversation so they forget what they're doing. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if an array system was hitting them at this point in the continuum.
Yeah.
With memory loss.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd call it dementia or this and that, and I'm thinking, well, it may not be. Some of these, unfortunately, there are some things that that could be connected in with this program.
Yeah,
It's pretty sad. But are you involved in shamanism? It sounds like you are.
Kind of peripherally. I've learned a little bit about Native American medicine from some Cherokee ladies I used to know in Las Vegas, and I've done some ceremony on my own behalf before. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, you just strike me as someone who has you're just an old soul. I can tell you're an old soul.
Yeah.
That's another blessing, right?
Yes, it is.
I think that's the same thing with me too, because I did just fall off the turnip truck, so they hit the wrong person with the program.
Yeah.
Thank goodness it wasn't some kid or something, That's really interesting. But were you always psychic as a child? Now you did have events that were connected to contacts.
Yeah, I think that I was psychic as a child, but I didn't really know how to handle it or what it really was. And of course, it didn't get much reinforcement from parents or school or anything else like that. So I've kind of had to reclaim it in my later life.
Yeah, it tends to get overlooked. I was lucky enough to come from a family that was very much into dowsing and things like that, and so I was encouraged with it. But that's really good. And also, you're on the Exopolitics Institute Advisory Board. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, the Exopolitics Institute has decided to put aside the question of are we alone in the universe, because they think there's ample evidence to support the fact that we are being visited. So they've turned to kind of the next most interesting questions, which is how will contact impact our world? How will it impact us, politically, socially, environmentally? And, they're kind of exploring those questions and looking at all the aspects of contact and ET experience, and trying to build some kind of meaningful picture as to what's going on.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not going to be one of the way they do it in Hollywood, where everything is fear-based and the extraterrestrials are all mean and that's...
No, they're definitely not of that frame of mind.
That's really good. And you know what I see, and I'm sure you can agree. I mean, there are so many different species here in what we call spacesuits, our physical bodies. So, I mean, we're already the extraterrestrial. I mean, it's just a matter of awakening to who we really are as star beings and accepting that heritage in the stars and the heavens. And I think that's, once again, it's been shrouded in because of the churches and organized religion and organized governments and corporations. They've erased a lot of that celestial heritage with their propaganda. So now people have to kind of remind themselves of their divinity, and of course there are beings on this world to remind us of that. But
yeah, there's a fascinating book that I've been in the middle of reading. I keep getting interrupted, but it's called Alien Interview. And let me grab it really quick, and I'll get the title or the author. It's Alien Interview. And it is based on documents printed by Matilda O'Donnell McElroy. And it was edited by Lawrence R. Spencer. And it's available on Amazon. And basically what it is it's a series of interviews with an ET that were done by this nurse, Matilda O'Donnell. And it was one of the living Roswell alien. And she did interviews with him where he learned to think to her in English. And it's just absolutely remarkable information. There's information in here that's extremely similar, almost like confirming information for things that I put in my own book.
Wow. That's interesting.
It's just fascinating. And it talks about these control mechanisms that have been kind of put around planet Earth that actually caused our memory to be wiped when we incarnate here. And that the mind wipe was pretty complete until recently, when some of those control boxes were damaged by other factions. and now people are starting to have memories bleed through. And I thought that was so fascinating to read that because I've experienced that myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've heard of frequency fences and things like that. I'm also under the impression that when we break orbit with this planet, say we were going to travel to another star system, we would forget everything here on this world through our own molecular design and DNA and through vibration and frequency.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's another amnesia that we get because, it's really interesting. Say we take a bunch of people and we terraform them on another planet. Well, they won't remember being on Earth if they tried to come back. They wouldn't even recognize being here before. They might on a subliminal level, but that's the kind of consciousness and frequency altering consciousness that happens, which I find interesting. But that woman, I believe, didn't they try to debunk her, that Matilda O'Donnell, and say that she wasn't really a nurse or something?
They may have. I didn't hear about them debunking her.
Okay.
But I will say that as a fan of Stargate SG-1, if this information was in the hands of the government or the military for a long time before this book came out, a lot of the material in this book was probably put into Stargate SG-1.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a group in this called the Domain that remind me very, very much of the Asgard in Stargate SG-1.
Hmm.
And then they talk about Brothers of the Serpent, and you couldn't get a more close description of the Goa'uld.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
wow.
if there's any truth to this at all, and it's quite remarkable information, I have a feeling some of it was leaked into that series, Stargate SG-1.
I wouldn't be surprised. I used to love that show, the early days. And then I was inducted, and I didn't watch it anymore because every time I watched anything, they would try to program me. So I stopped watching television.
Yeah.
Which kind of, it was a love-hate relationship. I only watched the Sci-Fi Channel anyway, but.
I know.
Yeah, but SG-1 was spot on. Once again, it's kind of like Star Trek. There's some things in there that really ring true.
Yeah, there was a lot of things.
Yeah.
So.
That's very, very interesting. And where were you from? Now, where did you grow up? What state were you in?
I was born in California, in Fullerton. I lived in Fullerton, and then when I was about 11 years old, we moved back to Ohio, and wasn't really my favorite place to live, but I lived there until I graduated from high school, and then I pretty much left Ohio for a while, then went back for a while, and then when I went into the military, that was my way to get back into the Southwest, which I just love living in the Southwest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really pretty there. So, in all of your abduction experiences with the military, that was obviously done while you were in the military, right, in that state?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So basically, Colorado really wasn't the area where you experienced all this stuff. It was more when you were in the military.
Yeah, it was in the military, and it was when I was in Nevada, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I've been an ET experiencer since early childhood.
Right. So you were definitely. Do you think there's? It seems to me like there's no such thing as coincidence, and I say this all the time. So it's almost like you were almost fated into going into the military. Do you think so or no?
I think so, and I think that I was one of those abductees that the military was informed that I was being abducted by ETs, and I think that that's why they picked me for what happened to me in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Exposing me to extraterrestrial technology and an extraterrestrial, and just doing some of the things they did.
Right.
I think that they did it because of that.
Yeah, it makes sense. Do you remember any of the extraterrestrial technology at all?
I remember some of it. It's very advanced. Like I was shown a scout craft, and I was shown a diagram of how it works. Mm-hmm. And I have the diagram in my book, but just the basic outline was it was saucer shaped, and around on the inside of the saucer, like if you were looking at a diagram of it, on the inside around that saucer edge, there were 6 metal torus shaped objects, so 6 donuts basically, mm-hmm. made out of some kind of metal that could generate electromagnetism. Mm. In the center, there was an extremely advanced neural interface where you would sit in the chair, and that chair would just start picking up information from your body, and then you could fly the craft just by thinking to it, and it was natural as moving one of your arms or legs. Mm-hmm. You just would think, I want to go here, and the computer would translate here from the image in your mind and make the coordinate corrections to fly the craft to that location.
Nice. I like that kind of technology.
Yeah.
Well, that's not bad.
And some other technology that I saw on my Lyran people's ship was like holographic technology, where you're basically, it's something similar to like what was in Minority Report, where you're standing and you have these displays just kind of around you, and you can touch them and interact with them. It was real similar to that.
Interesting.
And I would go into a glass tube when I go on the ship, and when I'm in the glass tube, they turn on this machine and sound and light waves would go through my body, and they would upload all my Earth experience into those holographic systems. Nice. Then my people go and they access my experiences, and it helps them understand more what it's like for people on Earth.
Well, those don't sound bad. Now, some of that description doesn't sound too bad.
Well, it's not bad because these are my people, and they're good people. They love me. I'm part of them, and they have been looking out for me all along.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and very familiar to some of the stuff you're describing. Sounds very familiar to me. So I don't know, you might be a brother or sister from another planet or something. But
yeah,
it's really interesting. What's interesting is you were talking about the way you were connecting in with the ship, and of course that's kind of like a symbiotic relationship or through consciousness. So you became one with the ship. Is that correct or no?
I wouldn't say I became one with the ship. I just it was more like a device, like this glass tube, and I would go into the glass tube, and I'd kind of just pass through the wall of it because I would go in it in my astral body. And but then still, when they turned it on and the sound and light waves started passing through my astral body, kind of bouncing back and forth on the inside of the tube and passing through my body as it bounced back and forth. And then in the bouncing back and forth, there are implants in my body from my people. You know, like higher dimensional implants. And those implants are what interfaces with the holographic system and uploads my life experience.
Nice. Excellent. Those are more like stabilizers for you, too, I would suspect. But yeah. Very good. And you know what? We're getting ready to wrap this up pretty soon. But once again, I want to make sure everybody knows how to get a hold of you and also the name of your website.
Yeah. My websites are encounterswithhealing.com. and facingtheshadow.embracingthelight.com. And if you want to email me, my email address is gaiatribe.niara@gmail.com.
That's awesome. And we still have a few more minutes here, but I want to make sure we get that in. And so what advice can you give to anybody who's a possible abductee or a MyLab? Is there anything you really want to say to reach out to any of our listeners who might be contactees, abductees, or have gone through something like this?
Yeah, I would say the first thing you should do is make a timeline of your life where you get a piece of paper and you just draw a line from one side to the other. And on the far left, just, put a little mark at the beginning of the line that says birth, and that's when you're born. And then the other end of the line is where you are in your present time, whatever age you are. And then just go along that line and kind of mark the years. And then when something happened that you remember, make a little mark on the line. Like if you were 3 years old, you make a mark, sometime after birth where, you had an experience where something happened. Maybe you had an extraterrestrial experience. And then maybe, go along the line and maybe you're 16 years old and something else happened. That's the best way to do it because that starts to jog your memory. And as you fill in the timeline and you start thinking about your experiences, you probably remember more. And also I suggest for people to write down their experiences as they're doing this timeline exercise. And it's not about really writing a book, although you could make a book from it if you wanted to. But it's really a tool for you to start working with your memory and reclaiming as much of it as you can.
Good advice. Very good advice. And also, I just want to thank you again for being on the show tonight, Niara. It's been an honor to have you on. I have a great deal of respect for you. And yeah, it's just, you're welcome to come back anytime you feel guided to share new information. And and all that good stuff. And also, I want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening. I hope you enjoyed the show. And stay tuned for Shiny Side Out with David Dunter-Mecki coming up next to sail you on into the night from down under. They always have a fabulous show coming up next. And I think we have maybe 2 minutes left. But why do you think that certain individuals have been selected for these kind of abductions or inductions?
Well, again, I think starseeds are selected because they already come in with enhancements.
Mm-hmm.
They already have, special abilities. So I think that's part of it. They look at genetics. I think standardized testing in school. I heard from Mark Phillips, who is who the one who helped Kathy O'Brien get out of her mind-controlled sex slavery. Mm-hmm. He said when he was part of the CIA that they would have the standardized testing that children do in schools, where they fill in the little pencil mark or little bubble, to fill in the answer. Mm-hmm. We all did it. We got called down to the cafeteria and sat for hours filling out these test forms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they run them through a computer, and they pick up what people have an aptitude for, even at a young age. And so they watch children that they pick as having special skills and abilities from a very young age from those standardized tests. And I had to laugh when I heard that, because there were some of those tests that I just found so boring and I couldn't, figure it out, that I sat there filling in those dots in the prettiest pattern that I could figure out to make on the paper.
That's so funny, because I used to do the same thing. I would get bored and then I would just kind of guess, just go right down the thing real quick.
Yeah.
That's so funny. But yeah, isn't it sneaky of them, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, they probably thought I was this airhead and I would never amount to anything. And then I come out with this 530-page book.
It's because you know too much. Yeah, you're not one of those that tries to understand the illusion that they try to create.
Well, I educated myself. I went to school like everybody else, but I had my strong interests and I really educated myself.
Awesome. Well, Niara, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.